to Bempire Radio.
He told me I'm useless.
Welcome to the Bempire. It's JP Genius again, showcasing the Bay Area's rising electronic musicians. You just heard Ritual by Memory Theater, a synth-pop artist from Berkeley by way of Southern California, who, according to their Bandcamp page, quote, hates memory. A lot of their music focuses on mental health and depression, but often includes a light at the end of the tunnel. With that in mind, let's hear Eu4ic and Memory Theater discuss their musical influences.
So you're Matt, and I know you by Memory Theater. And what kind of music do you make?
The type of music I make is more like synth pop, influenced by a lot of, I'd say, dream pop, and quite a few other subgenres of electronic music. I'm really influenced by not only like Depeche Mode and some of those classic synth pop bands, but I'm also influenced a lot by like the Cocteau Twins and Slowdive. In general, too, another field of music I'm really interested in is like game music and anime soundtracks, and there's quite a wide range of different electronic subgenres that influence my sound.
Fantastic. When did you start making electronic music?
Well, the first electronic song I made was around 2014. It was this instrumental called Fields of Summer, and around that time, I had previously only made a lot of, more guitar-based music, but I started to gain more of an interest in electronic sounds, primarily because it was something that had always intrigued me and something that, I have been into since I was a child. But I really started to make electronic music around the middle of 2017, I'd say. I was living on my own in a studio in Berkeley, which I still reside in. And it was really there that I found the space to really start exploring that side of music that I've always wanted to create.
So you were making music like before it kind of turned into your signature sound and before you started making electronic music, is that right?
Yeah, around 2011 was when I first started recording and writing like full songs. And interestingly enough, it started to happen basically within the first week that I moved to the Bay Area from San Diego.
And so when did you start making music like at all? Like, did you start making music when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I actually didn't make music. When I was a lot younger, my primary interest was actually with like drawing and art. Me and all of my siblings were homeschooled actually. So we had a lot of time on our hands to cultivate our own hobbies and interests. And I was really into drawing and kind of got out of that because my brothers were way too wildly talented for me. I always got a lot out of music. It wasn't until I was 13, I think, that I started to become musical in a way where I was like playing an instrument. I started to learn guitar because my brother bought this like $100 nylon string acoustic guitar from the Home Shopping Network, and he never played it. So I would just, spend hours a day at home going on like ultimateguitar.com, just trying to learn all these like different songs, like mostly metal songs. And
Cool.
I kind of dabbled here and there with creating songs like in high school, but it really wasn't until, my early 20s that I really took things more seriously.
Okay, so you kind of had a creative family then.
Yeah, definitely. Me and all my siblings are very creatively oriented. Interestingly enough, our parents aren't the most creatively inclined individuals. Like, art doesn't really play a big role in their lives. But I think for me and my siblings, because we were, in a lot of ways, kind of like socially isolated, being homeschooled, we really had to find something else to find like catharsis in and to find meaning. And like I said, my brothers have all been drawn to art. And my sister was drawn to film, kind of gravitated more towards music and writing.
And you pretty much were born and raised in San Diego?
Yeah, I was born and raised in San Diego in this small suburban town called Escondido. Not the greatest city. It's very conservative suburb, and it was a little bit of a difficult place to grow up in, just because it feels kind of like a desert in terms of art and culture. But I'm lucky in that I've made some good friends here nonetheless who are kind of similar to me in terms of interests and what they care about. Moving to the Bay Area and living there for the past 9 years has made a big difference for my creativity in general.
I guess the old saying goes, isolation breeds creativity. Wait, that's not it, right? I made it up. But seriously, being alone often keeps my creative juices flowing. Here's another one of Memory Theater's bops, Corridor of Dreams. Many musicians I know of do live shows, but aside from performing with a gospel band, I haven't performed live that much, if at all. Memory Theater hasn't done consistent live performances until recently. When they do, it's interesting.
Okay, so have you played out a lot with your music so far?
I really wasn't playing shows consistently until this year. My first ever show was like a really tiny show in like the summer of 2017 at Wolfman Books. After that, I actually didn't play a show again until like October 2018 when I played at the Uptown. Then I had another gap of like 6 months. I started to consistently have shows pretty much every month all of this year, and it's something I'm like super grateful for, because I honestly, for most of, the past like 15 years of my life, like the thing that I've just dreamt of and that I thought would be fulfilling enough for me in my life would be to just play local shows or just play anywhere, really.
Nice. And so what does your setup look like? Like, what's a memory theater show like?
So a memory theater show, it really varies based on how much help I can have carrying shit. So generally what I use is my Korg monologue. And I have my Korg monologue running through some guitar pedals, like a chorus pedal and a delay pedal and a distortion pedal. I run that into this 8-channel mixer that I have. And I also use my vocal processor that I run into my mixer that I use for, live vocals. I like having a lot of effects just in general, so it's pretty important for me to use my vocal processor when I'm singing live, because I love the reverb. And I also, for my backing track, I use my iPhone actually, and that's where the much of the sound comes from, and I layer on top of it with my Korg and my vocals. But in the past a couple shows, I'm actually starting to reincorporate playing guitar live, because that is my first instrument, and I really like to have that as like a texture added to the electronic sounds. I don't want it to be at the forefront, but I do think it can add a more unique element in a live setting. I think in future shows, I'm going to try and actually bring out the monologue and the guitar and the vocals and see how, that can all blend together in one setting.
Oh, fun. So you said when your first show was in a bookstore, do you like playing in places that are not totally music venues? Like, there's music venues and then there's like art boutiques or other kinds of venues. So where have been some of your favorite kinds of places to play?
I actually really love playing at places like that, because there's like a cool, holistic feel to places that are like art boutiques or just non-traditionally music venues, because in my experience, some of those places also are more open to different sorts of performances and different styles of music. So one of the places that I really enjoyed playing at was Pro Arts in downtown Oakland. Yeah, they're a really awesome venue. They're primarily an arts venue, but they also have spoken word events and writers who come, and they also have a lot of music shows as well. So I really enjoyed playing there. I also, one of my favorite places to play at was Eu4ic,
cool.
which is a great spot. They're mostly a music venue, but it's a much more like a DIY community-oriented spot, like run by just people who love music and want to support local artists. There's just more of a community feel to spots like that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I've heard great things about Eu4ic, and I actually drove Lyft this year, and I dropped people off at Eu4ic, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get off work now and just go in there or something. It looks really cool. Isn't it kind of like an old house?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like a house, and people live there, and people who, set up shows and, take care of the shows also live there. It's just like a home that's right near Jack London Square, kind of. It's like on 5th Street. But it's you should check it out sometime. I actually think your music would be a great fit. So maybe we can set up a show.
Nice. Yeah, I've been totally thinking about that. It seems like a cool place. It's on my list. Do you have any shows coming up?
I have a show coming up January 25th. In San Francisco. It's going to be on a Saturday. It's called Scouts Artillery, and it's in the Soma. I'm going to be playing with Maya Songbird and Elfrida.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Honestly, like memory theater, I'd rather perform in a small, non-musical venue, just to get my foot in the door. It feels more intimate and you can better connect with your audience. How about another one of Memory Theater's jams, Forbidden Book? That was Forbidden Book by our guest, Memory Theater. They've talked about their musical style and influences, as well as their recent live shows. Now let's get into the deep part of our conversation. What exactly inspires their lyrics?
So I'm checking out some of your lyrics, and I'm noticing it kind of seems like you like to write about romance. Or maybe that's what I'm kind of getting, or maybe I'm sensing like a theme of personal transformation here. So, like, what kinds of experiences like inspire your songwriting?
I definitely try to write as honestly as possible from a personal perspective about, things that are important to me or things that I felt or the ways of being that I aspire to. A lot of my songs will deal a lot with kind of overcoming, trauma from childhood. That's a pretty important theme of mine, especially as a non-binary, queer identifying person. There's a lot of stuff to unpack how this world is, and I'm really invested in trying to understand myself and what are the ways that I've internalized harmful or toxic ideas and behavior, and what are the ways in which I need to heal, and how can I heal through music? How can I heal through understanding myself? And a lot of times I feel through writing lyrics and creating songs, I come to a greater place of peace with myself and my past, and I come to a greater place of understanding about who I am. A lot of my lyrics are really sad. They can be pretty somber and depressing, but I try to straddle the line between honesty about the realities of painful things that I've experienced, while also looking towards transformation, as you had said, because I'm not a fan of completely hopeless art. I love art that's extremely depressing, but art that is completely without any sort of light or without any sort of even gesture towards becoming something new, I'm not really into that.
I can sense that in your music.
I alluded to the theme of a light at the end of the tunnel earlier. It's always nice to see, or in this case hear, a happy ending. And speaking of the theme, let's hear another Memory Theater jam, Strange Blue. As they mentioned earlier, a big topic of Memory Theater's music is mental illness, and a big influence on one of their songs is a video game called Night in the Woods, as you'll later understand due to the song's title. Only night turns into light.
it sounds like it's coming from a place of someone who has dealt with depression, but like there's definitely a very calming, like reassuring sense from the music as well. So it's very cathartic. It's like it's for someone who's dealing with that, but is on their way to healing. So
that you bring that up. Mental illness is a very important theme in my music. I try to be as open as possible about the fact that like I have been pretty severely depressed for most of my life. It's a really important topic that I try to explore with as much honesty as I can. I have a song called Light in the Woods, and it's on my album, Some Sort of Paradise, and that song is influenced by this video game called Night in the Woods. That video game's about a queer cat who comes back to her hometown after suffering from a mental illness episode at college, and she drops out of college. And that whole game is like a really beautiful take about finding hope in, a hopeless environment and finding hope still in community despite very depressing external circumstances outside of your control. And one of the phrases from the game that I really moved me is there's a part in the game where there's a conversation between the main character, May, and another character named Gus, and they're both queer characters, and they're sitting alone at night talking about their lives. And Gus is telling May about all the really messed up stuff that he experienced growing up and what he experienced from his parents. And one of the lines that he says is that, I've learned that nothing can save us forever, but there's a lot of things that can save us today. And that's like a line in my song, Light in the Woods. That's the type of thing that I gain influence from to help me write lyrics and that help me, sort through some pretty difficult things in a way that's hopefully conducive to growing. And growing up in a really conservative Christian environment, one of the things that I internalized was this idea of needing salvation, and this idea of not only needing salvation physically, but spiritually, and needing that salvation because I was incapable of saving for myself, and because I was such a spiritually depraved individual that I needed someone else to save me because I was so terrible. And that's like something I really deeply internalized. Like I really deeply internalized this notion that anything bad that happens to me on earth is something that I deserve and that I actually should consider to be merciful because I'm so sinful against God that I deserve like infinite torment. And that sounds kind of like over the top and existential, but it's quite true. I've really grappled with that sense like my entire life. And so, when I saw that phrase, nothing saves us forever, but many things can save us today, that to me is a much more realistic and poignant turn on that sort of Christian concept of eternal salvation. It's like, there's nothing really, in my opinion, that can save us forever. But, there's all kinds of things, on this earth, like right now, that we can seek to find healing, at least in the moment. And that can be music, that can be art, it can be books, it can be film, it can be another person, just walking with another person. It's a phrase and a thought that gets me through a lot of stuff.
That's amazing.
Whew, that quote was deep. I'm a little speechless at the moment. You heard Memory Theater talk about Light in the Woods. So, let's hear it.
It takes time for anyone to get a hold of themselves. When you are far away from the love that breathes inside your eyes, you can always recall the truth that you have the right to choose a new way. You don't have to be
And that was our featured musician Memory Theater's Light in the Woods, with an L, not an N. Earlier, they discussed the topic of mental health and how it influences their craft. Overall, music really allowed them to express themselves, considering they grew up in a conservative town.
Yeah, I also grew up going to church, and then I just kind of decided not to go. But I remember there was a time when I just sort of released myself from it. And my mom was always really open-minded, luckily, but she still really wanted me to go to church, and she really thought that I would benefit. But even as a child, like, I felt what you felt, like, oh, they're saying we're bad. They're saying we're sinners. You know?
Yeah.
And she would just be like, no, that's not true. God loves you. And I'd be like, then why do we go to church and learn this stuff where they literally tell us that every day, or every Sunday?
Yeah.
And we have to come back here and pray for our sins again. Like, I'm much younger than my mom, but I'm thinking to myself, like, I can see what they're trying to say here. And she'd be like, oh, that's not true. Don't read into it.
Exactly.
So
kids are smart. Yeah, I was deep into church from the second grade, basically through the end of high school. Like, I played in the church band. I was going to youth group every week. I went to Bible studies. I went to church camp. Like, I was heavily invested in Christianity. But at the same time, I think I was experiencing so much cognitive dissonance because there were so many things inside of me that were fighting against it too, that one of the things that I look back on and I kind of laugh is in high school, I was really into metal, and I would listen to a lot of like violently anti-Christian, like Scandinavian metal that I found on the internet, and I like argue with people about metal subgenres for like hours online. And I would like, I would play in the Christian youth group on Wednesday night, and I come home and then I just listen to like anti-Christian metal in like the darkness of my room, and like my brain was just like, oh yeah, this is okay. This is fine. It's interesting how stuff like that can happen, when you're younger. There's still parts of you that are like crying out to resist, even if you don't consciously recognize it at the time.
Right. Yeah. And music can kind of do that for us. It can kind of bring out things we aren't talking about and lets us think and feel things that are new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One artist that's very influential to me is someone named James Brooks. They had a musical act called Elite Gymnastics back many years ago, and they were kind of touring a lot. They were in the same vein of like synth-pop, like Grimes and stuff, but also like very moving lyrics and very honest lyrics. And I read this one interview with them recently, and they have a new project called Default Genders. They said in this interview that, one of the things that they value about music is they feel as if sometimes their music can articulate to other people who they are more than they could ever articulate, through conversation or otherwise. And I really like vibes with that because I feel the same way. And I feel that if someone can listen to my songs and like read the lyrics, it will probably reveal more about who I am to them than they would learn otherwise. And I think that's pretty powerful about music in general.
Oh, for sure.
Eu4ic is absolutely right. Music does bring out our unspoken feelings. I probably experienced that and didn't even know it. The next song you'll hear from Memory Theater, Azure Paler Than the Sky.
responsible for everything they feel. You don't need to live alone, end your life by returning home. If they die, you'll be to blame. If they die, you're the one to blame. Do I deserve to die if I don't submit? Do I deserve to die if I don't submit to the ones I love? Do I deserve to die if I don't submit to the ones I love? To the ones I love? To the ones I Is it right to love myself? Is my worth determined by approval from another's words? Can you live with just your
You know, Asia is almost exactly the color of the great blue sky. Now allow Memory Theater to talk about what I consider their biggest accomplishment so far, their first studio album, Some Sort of Paradise, released just last year.
And so this is your first album, right?
Yeah, it's my very first album that was professionally mastered too. I had it mastered by Antiquity Records in Oakland. They're really great, awesome people. I was referred to them by Spelling.
I love her.
Yeah, I know, she is amazing. I love Spelling so much. I'm so happy too that she's been getting so much more popular and getting so much more recognition. She's a big influence on me too, and she's always been very supportive and helpful for me. She was the one who referred me to them because I had talked about how I was trying to find someone to master my songs, and because they worked on her releases as well. She's like really like represents to me a lot of the sorts of style or like community of like electronic solo artists in the Bay that I really am into and I really appreciate.
Dope. Yeah, she's super cool. I like her videos too. But do you think you might do a music video?
I would love to do a music video. Visuals actually are very important to me in general. A lot of my songs, I'll have a specific series of images that are kind of recurring in my brain while I create songs. And sometimes it won't be for any conscious reason. I'm not sure why particular images will be recurring when I'm creating certain music, but it's definitely a pretty important aspect.
For sure. Tell me about the choice of photo for the front cover. It's like, it looks kind of 80s and kind of funky.
It is actually a screenshot from this very obscure late 80s or early 90s DOS video game that was made in Japan. Basically, it's this Japanese DOS game that has all kinds of weird, like, anthropomorphic, like, fruits and weird flying vehicles, and it's just like this weird, like, avant-garde, like, kind of anime style show, like video game that's like, it's not like an hour and a half long, and you can find it actually on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing there. And when I was watching it, I knew that there was like a lot of impressive visual imagery. And so when I saw that scene with like this television screen and all these like neon colors and everything, it seemed like a good album cover. And it actually seemed to be thematically resonant somehow. At first I wasn't sure how it would be thematically resonant, but then I thought more about, you know, the importance of technological mediums to my music and like the idea of like television, and how that's played a big role in my life growing up, especially being homeschooled. I watch a lot of TV and how, you know, memories can, be intertwined with, you know, things on, technological mediums like, you know, VHS tapes, like the recording of particular events, recording of particular times in someone's life, you know, recordings of particular shows and movies at particular times in, you know, a decade or a day or whatever. And so, like, I just took a screenshot of that image and, you know, fiddled around with it a little bit and thought that it was good to go.
Nice. Okay, so like I'm looking at when I look at this, I think I'm looking at a TV on a TV stand. Is that a real TV or is that a TV within the game?
It's a TV within the game. It's like a brief, like 5-second shot of just this weird ass looking TV. It looks like it has like leopard print and it's like pink, and there's like all kinds of weird dancers inside that TV screen as well. And I really like the idea of pairing that with the album title, Some Sort of Paradise, just because the idea of paradise is really important to me, and I've been able to find glimpses of paradise through, you know, oddly enough, these technological devices that have been able to transport me to particular realms and places that have like brought me, you know, feelings of catharsis or hope.
Oh yeah.
Well, dang, Memory Theater. I need to step up my artwork game. With that in mind, since you already heard one track from this album, Light in the Woods, how about another? Dear Mariah, I Won't Forget.
safe and sound. You reach back for an empty sky. You say,
You just heard Dear Mariah, I Won't Forget by our guest, Memory Theater. Besides music and mental health, other influences on Memory Theater's work include TV and the decade in which they and Eu4ic grew up, the 90s.
Film is a storytelling medium, and so are games these days. For me, it's crazy how, like, TV is so a part of our culture, and we try to pretend that it's not. Like, most people are really resistant, I've found, to, like, discussing how, like, films, TV, and video games are just a huge part of our subconscious.
A lot of people will denigrate, like, TV, and I understand. You know, obviously it's a part of a mass capitalistic system in which, you know, businesses are trying to advertise commodities to make people purchase them, and there's all kinds of things that cater to really awful societal structures on television. But I also think that, like anything, you know, there's always pockets of resistance, and there's always outliers, especially in my circumstance where, you know, we really didn't get outside much as kids. I think we were only outside the house about 2 hours a week up until I was, like, in high school. So I really didn't have much outside contact with the world, and access to particular shows that were thankfully healthy for me to watch really it was like a lifesaver for me. Like, a really formative show for me growing up was Sailor Moon. You know, it was like my first experience with art of any sort that felt like it heavily validated emotional experiences and emotional expressions of, like, friends, you know, looking out for each other, or, like, people crying, you know, people being in love with each other, people showing compassion to each other. And it was especially meaningful for me because, you know, growing up in a very white environment and being half Filipino, I really treasured the fact that the Sailor Moon was made by, you know, non-white people. And it was something that I think at the time I didn't recognize that I was just a child. But looking back retrospectively, it was really important in that regard. You know, I have a very interesting relationship with just television or media and culture in general, because in a lot of ways it was so, like, life-saving to me.
When I was a kid, I remember everyone was in Sailor Moon, And my my parents didn't even let me watch TV, and I didn't get into it that much. But it's so funny because recently I've looked back on Sailor Moon and also a lot of other animes, and I've been really surprised at how I didn't realize like the depth of the relationships that were being built and like the romance, and like it's just so well done. Like there's so many animes that are just really brilliant that way. So you're basically a 90s kid? You kind of grew up in the 90s?
Yes, I'm 31, so I grew up with a lot of 90s stuff. Are you a 90s kid?
Yeah, I'm 33, so I was born in 86, and I remember the
okay. What was video game music? Has it been inspirational to you in your own musical endeavors?
Definitely. Or? Yeah, like I'm really into the Link to the Past soundtrack, and like when I think about the kind of the sound of my music and the way it's like mixed, it's very low end, and it kind of sounds like I sort of realized it too. Like when I was making my music, I couldn't figure out why I liked my sound, and then I realized, like, oh, it totally sounds like a Link to the Past music when you think about it. So
I can definitely see that about your music. There's a couple of songs of yours that when I listened to, like one of my first thoughts was like, oh, this would be really well suited for like a town setting in like RPG on like the Super Nintendo. So I think you're communicating exactly what you're aiming for.
Nice. Good to know. Sweet. Okay, cool. Oh, and what are your favorite bands and your favorite music in the 90s?
Oh, what's some of my favorite music from the 90s?
Yeah.
Actually, so one of my favorite artists is this German dub techno duo called Basic Channel. Yeah, they were like a really awesome electronic duo that they kind of popularized the style of techno called dub techno, which is like a very like sort of atmospheric techno that takes elements from dub and like the sort of like heavy reverb sound of dub, but puts it into a techno context. They have a song called Phillips Track, which is amazing, and it basically sounds like a cool like Sega Genesis style sounding song. I definitely pretty strongly into stuff like these days. I still love Nirvana. Nirvana's a big one for me. Like I love like Slow Dive, and I like a lot of dream pop and shoegaze, like My Bloody Valentine, and just video game soundtracks in general.
Cool.
I'm a 2000s kid, so my influences were Total Request Live, 106 in Park, you name it. But a lot of Memory Theater's music reminds me of video games, like Game Boy games. Let's hear No Paradise. let's hear what the future holds for Memory Theater. A new album? National tours? Perhaps an international tour? Who knows? Only time will tell.
So what are your plans for 2020? Are you going to book any tours or?
I definitely am planning on putting out a new release in 2020. I'm starting to amass almost enough songs for another album. So ideally, I'd like to put that out in the first half of 2020. And it's not a full album, at least an EP. In terms of touring, I didn't have any like big tours planned, but one thing I'd really love is to kind of branch outside of the Bay Area and play some shows elsewhere in the state. And, you know, of course, I'm always open and interested in being able to play in other states as well or outside of the country if given the opportunity.
Yeah, me too. I'd love to play internationally. I just visited.
Yeah, wouldn't that be the best?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How
it was
was
a lot
it?
of fun. I didn't play, but I went for like a work conference thing. And, oh my god, it's so fun! It's a cool place.
Is it very like electronic music friendly there, or?
I would say there's even like electronic music being played like in the metro station, and you know what I mean.
Wow.
And it's also like there's a ton of cafes everywhere. There's a good amount of clubs. Yeah, I mean, of course, I heard that the nightlife and the electronic music is and like techno and whatnot is off the chain. So I'd love to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, that part of the interview was quite the ear opener. It would be very interesting and exciting to witness Memory Theater go on tour globally. How about another one of their bops? Here's Last Life in the Universe. before we wrap up our conversation, let's see where we can find Memory Theater.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to kind of shout out and tell people how to follow you for your next release, where should they go?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to keep up to date what I'm doing musically, they can go to my Bandcamp page, Memory Theater, spelled Theater. So you can just go to my Bandcamp, memorytheater.bandcamp.com, and that's where I'm going to be uploading all of my official releases. And of course, people can also follow me on Spotify, Apple Music, and all that. So I'm pretty available on the internet. If people want to keep track of my events, primarily I post those on my Facebook page, which is also just facebook.com/memorytheater. And under events, I always put on all my shows, anything coming up. I also post a lot about my upcoming shows on my Instagram account. And my Instagram account is it's Memory Theaters, but it's spelled Theatres because the regular Memory Theater account name was already taken.
Darn.
I know, it's a bummer. So those two spots, Instagram and Facebook, are the best place to keep track of, any upcoming shows.
Awesome. Cool. Did we? Is there anything else you want to kind of promote?
If anyone wants to hear some of my new demos, which are the new songs that I'm likely going to be putting on my official release, they should check out my SoundCloud, which is just soundcloud.com/memorytheater, spelled theater the normal way. And I have a bunch of new songs uploaded there. They're in demo format now, so they're going to sound a lot better and more crisp once they get fully mastered. But that's a pretty good peek at the sorts of styles that I'm starting to experiment with.
Well, yeah,
Also,
that's fun. It was really cool getting to know you and more about your music and stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much for, conducting this interview. It was really great. And I'm going to be plugging your tunes, too, on my social media accounts because I think you're awesome. And I love what you put out. And I hope you'll put out another release soon, too, or, get your current release more visibility because it's definitely good stuff.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We'll help each other out. We'll boost each other on social media.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to thank Memory Theater for sharing so much with us, including their music and especially their take on mental health, which is still very important to discuss. Like Raw Jaw in the last episode, it's great to hear an artist channel their life into their music. Eu4ic conducted the interview, and Emma Burlingame edited it. The music you heard in the background comes from 9th Avenue Music, Photographic Memory, and Conifold. And of course, this episode was produced, narrated, and edited by me, JP Genius. Let's close it out with one more Memory Theater banger, Rose Funeral. Until next time.
As you watch me here's a lesson you'll never forget.